My name is Bayli Locklear, and for assignment 2, I chose to analyze Dorothy Smith's theoretical perspective on feminism and compare it to the issue of women's reproductive rights oppression in America. First, I'll provide an overview of the contents of the video. Dorothy Smith's feminist theory challenged the way sociologists processed experiences and information when she first wrote her book, The Conceptual Practices of Power, A Feminist Sociology of Knowledge. It was a new way of analyzing individuals' perspectives in an unbiased sociological way that put them in the shoes of the subject they were studying through her standpoint theory. This standpoint theory can be applied to the issues women face in America today regarding reproductive health rights to abortion and birth control. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, women have been suffering from the lack of and continually decreasing access to legal and safe abortions. They're allowed little to no say in the lawmaking process, and it is becoming extremely unfair and dangerous. Next, I will break down Dorothy Smith's feminist theory into a couple of sections to analyze. From page 14 of The Conceptual Practices of Power, A Feminist Sociology of Knowledge, Smith denotes the relations of ruling as quote, total complex of activities differentiated into many spheres by which our kind of society is ruled, managed, and administered. It includes management, professions, the government, the activities of those who are selecting, training, and indoctrinating those who will be its governors, from page 14. She goes on to explain how sociology is what makes government personal to the individuals it rules. There are two modes of governing: one located inside the body and the space it occupies, and the other moving past it into the world. She quotes, "Men have functioned as subjects in the mode of governing. Women have been anchored in the local and particular phase of the bifurcated world," end quote, from page 18. She uses all of this to explain how men have basically created a world that see them as rulers and women as a subordinate. When they function and govern in this world, they fail to think about the effects it has on women's lives as well as their own, while women must think about the effects they have on their lives as well as their husbands' and children's lives, all because men are set up to be dominant. The Relations of Ruling analyzes the differences between a man and a woman's sphere and puts into words how it affects the woman. Smith also created the bifurcation of consciousness to describe the divide between a man and a woman's world and how staying within the beliefs of our own perspective does not lead us to make fair assumptions about the way others live. She quotes, "Once I become aware of how my world is put together as a practical everyday matter and of how my relations are shaped by its concrete conditions, I am led into the discovery that I cannot understand the nature of my experiences, my world, by staying within its ordinary boundaries of assumption and knowledge," from page 25. She describes how men and women live two separate lives and how men have created theirs in a way that makes women's everyday practices inferior to them. The examples she uses are women being clerks, taking care of patients, staying home to tend to the children in the home, etc. Men have created a world in their minds and in their physical lives that make them feel dominant over women and leaves women to pick up after them. Again, going along with the relations of ruling, where women's lives revolve around themselves and men's only revolve around them. Lastly, I will discuss the main point of her feminist theory, standpoint. Smith coined the term standpoint that means to see things from the perspective of the subordinate, which in her example is women. On page 28 of her book, she goes on to explain how the conceptual practices of an alienated knowledge of society severs our knowledge of actual society we know as we live and practice it. The standpoint of women exposes the alienated knowledge of the relations of ruling as the everyday practices of actual individuals and distinctively opens up for exploration the conceptual practices of what actual people do. In this chapter, she brings together the relations of ruling and bifurcation of consciousness to explain how they affect a woman's standpoint. Sociologists can only get an accurate picture of women's everyday lives by putting themselves in a woman's standpoint or her shoes to analyze the everyday life she lives at work and at home in a world dominated by men's rules. Now, I will be introducing the issue of the oppression of women's reproductive rights in America. I found the article Repercussions of Overturning Roe v. Wade for Women Across Systems and Beyond Borders, published by the Journal of Reproductive Health. This article describes the issue in detail, and all of the information used in this assignment came from there. The oppression of women's reproductive freedom began in the 1900s with the eugenics movement. The government began to control childbirth in minority and low-income communities by forcing women to get sterilized. From there, abortion and other reproductive health matters have always been controversial topics. Roe v. Wade was overturned in the summer of 2022, leaving the power to ban abortion to the states instead of being protected by federal law. Since then, there have been consistent attacks on women's rights to an abortion, especially in red states controlled by white men. According to the article, 13 states had trigger laws ready to be enacted by the second Roe was overturned, as it had been a discussion for a while before it happened. The main issue with these laws being left to the discretion of the state is that people who are making the laws to ban it, with little to no exceptions, are ill-informed, religion-driven white men. Banning abortion forces women who need to have them to travel to surrounding states to receive care. However, these bans predominantly affect minority women who do not have the ability to just up and go hours away to receive medical care that they should have a right to in their own state. The article quotes, "Mobility and stasis for Black and women of color to access safe and legal abortion care nationally will have inequitable and negative financial, social, and health effects," end quote. It is simply not realistic, and the men making these laws do not take this into consideration because they have never stepped foot into these women's lives. The article also quotes that Justice Samuel Alito, the man who introduced overturning Roe, his opinion stated, quote, "They need not even have an exception for incest or rape," end quote. This takes away women's autonomy to make decisions over their bodies. It's extremely unfair to women and unjust in a country founded on freedom for a man like Justice Alito, who has never had a baby or will never experience an emergent need for an abortion, to have the power to make ill-intended and dangerous laws about what women deserve to have rights to in regards to their own bodies. Now, I will be applying Dorothy Smith's feminist theory to the issue of women's reproductive rights oppression in America. Smith's relations of ruling can be applied to the issue because the majority of the government, being men, is the reason women are not being considered when it comes to making laws about abortion. Men have created this subconscious rule that women are subordinate and they need to make decisions for them while the women worry about taking care of the home and children. They rule as if there shouldn't be any input from women on the laws being made about their own reproductive health. These laws are also keeping women under their control because even if they can get an abortion, they must be within a certain number of weeks pregnant or meet criteria for an exception, like being raped, the baby being a product of incest, or if their lives are at birth during childbirth. Even then, they have to find a physician that's likely a male to approve and perform the abortion. At every step of the process and in their daily lives, women are affected by men's decisions in government. When it comes to the bifurcation of consciousness, the issue persists more that men fail to include input from women when making abortion laws. They don't stop to think about how the laws they make because of religious beliefs or simply out of ignorance of women's health care puts women at risk of death and other severe health issues. They think women should just adapt the laws by practicing abstinence or using all forms of birth control, though not all women may have access to them or access to quality sex education in low-income areas. Failing to step out of their world of consciousness and consider a pregnant woman's when making laws about her body has created a dangerous situation for women all over America. These men, like Justice Alito, do not put themselves in a woman's standpoint when forming these opinions and putting laws into action. They don't put themselves in at-risk or low-income women's shoes. They don't know what it's like to panic because they cannot afford a baby or to be told by their doctor that there is a high chance they will die in childbirth because the baby is stillborn. They don't want to take the time to think about what women do and experience every day in a world formulated by men. This is extremely dangerous to all women in America, but disproportionately affects minority women simply because a man cannot come down to the standpoint of a woman. In conclusion, banning abortion is simply about controlling women, and Smith's feminist theory can be used to analyze just how deep the oppression runs. Her description of the relations of ruling emphasizes the male control of the government and how it's problematic when they make laws about women's reproductive rights without input from women or even healthcare providers. The bifurcation of consciousness shows just how easy it could be to eliminate the divide between a man and a woman's world, but it can only be done if men open their eyes to a woman's world. Smith's standpoint theory shows a lack of consideration for women's situations when white male lawmakers create strict abortion bans because they will not look at things from a pregnant woman's standpoint. All of these things in Smith's feminist theory can be applied to current reproductive issues in America today.